Prepare to take an even deeper dive into Golden Eagle football. It's the Coach Dryden Show every Thursday at 6 o'clock live. Get behind the scenes with players, special guests, and a look inside game plans for every game live. Now, let's send it to Studio B with your host, Dryden Blackwell.
Everybody to the Coach Dryden Show on WLIJ. I'm your host, Braden Blackwell, joined by head coach of the Golden Eagles, Jed Dryden, and assistant coach, J.C. Hunsaker. Here at 6 o'clock hour, thank you for joining us for an hour of your time. And, Coach, what a game last week. I'll just go ahead and dive right into it. Me and Jason Boyette were up there calling that game, and our heart was racing the entire time. I can imagine yours was as well.
Mine was full of frustration, anger at moments. There was a whole lot going on. I don't know. I didn't really pay attention to the heart rate. It was, I'm sure from a fan perspective and everybody else, it was quite the game. But for us, it was incredibly frustrating at times. But, hand it to our guys. They, coaching staff, kids, everybody showed a ton of grit, kept working at it, and we gave ourselves a chance at the end, which is really all you can ask for. So you got to be happy with that. Yeah,
I know it was a tough fight there, and a lot of mishaps there in the first half, and y'all were able to pick it up well. And we'll talk a little bit more about it after we take a short break. We'll be right back here on the Coach Dryden Show on WLIJ.
Take advantage of these amazing deals this week at your Shelbyville Piggly Wiggly. A family pack of assorted pork chops, just $1.49 a pound.
And welcome back in, everybody. I've got Coach Dryden with me today. I've also got assistant coach and the head of the recruiting segment of everything, J.C. Hunsaker. Kind of give everybody a breakdown of what your job is here with the Golden Eagles and maybe a little bit of your background as well.
Yeah, so I am the assistant head coach. Judd has blessed me with that task, along with the offensive coordinator. And then along with those two roles, what we wanted to try to do is tackle recruiting as aggressively as we could. So I'm in charge of getting the information out of our players to the local universities, not even local, but I mean states that border us. And we do a recruiting fair. We've done that the last several years, where Coach Dryden and I, we travel to Titan Stadium and get to meet a lot of coaches, and try to do our best to sell our guys and who we think can go impact their programs in positive ways. And then also on the front of back here, in our buildings of getting the guys prepped to be recruitable. Checking academics along with grade checks that we do in season, out of season. Have they done the proper things to have those doors and windows still open? So we just want to give them the best chances if they want to continue their football playing career, that we weren't in the way. We actually help them open those doors. So that's one of my roles.
Yeah, and one of the big things that are kind of overlooked is you can be as good as you want to on the football field, but if you can't do anything in the classroom, it's not going to get you anywhere. Colleges aren't going to, look for somebody, yeah, you're good at football, but you've got a D average in your classes. So recruiting is, obviously you focus on the football talent, but the academic talent and who they are as a person and as a personality is pretty important as well. And so before we went to the break, we started talking about the Columbia Central game. First quarter and third quarter, the Lions beat the Eagles.
Yes.
And then the second and fourth, y'all won the quarters. It was a very big back and forth. It didn't feel like it for a little bit in the third quarter, down 10 late in the game, and obviously, morale felt a little bit in the back seat. But what was said in the huddle, what happened on that team just to be able to come back and dominate that fourth quarter like you did?
Everybody's going to get bored, hearing the same answer all the time, but it's the same message no matter what the score is, whether we're up, whether we're down, whether it's tied or anything like that. The same message is, remember what got us here. Remember that you play in this moment. You learn from the previous moment. You play in this moment. You can't worry about the next moment.
Right.
And then as soon as that snap occurs, you learn from it, and then you play this moment. And so that's always the message. It's the message in our off season. It's the message in the classroom. It's the message in practice. It's the message. It's the message all the way through. It's a straight shot all the way through everything we do in our program. Even going back to, say, something like our college recruiting, it's one of the 5 promises we make our players and parents when they come in as freshmen, that we'll do everything we can. If they'll do their part, we will find them a place to play. We've got one guy that's in northeastern Ohio right now, 7-ish hours away from us. We've got another that's in west central Illinois. We've got 2 in East Tennessee. So they're starting to, our guys are starting to get out there and go, but those guys did what they were supposed to do in each and every moment that they had to. And so it's a constant theme of everything we do, that you take care of the process and then the outcome takes care of itself. You don't focus on the outcome, you focus on how you get there and that roadmap. So it's pretty dang cool to watch it play out every single day and watch these guys grow.
Yeah, and just watching the game, as I mentioned before, Jason Boyett was doing the play-by-play calling. I was in the color, and it felt very tug of war back and forth, and Golden Eagles, they just simply wanted it more. And I think what really capped off that game the best is Brody Lavorne's last interception of the game, because that you felt like you had a seal on it at one point, and then that really brought everybody back together and realized that it was over.
Yeah, I think talking about Brody, it was actually before that they had we had made a stop on third down. They were sending the field goal team out. I can't remember what time on the clock was, 6-ish minutes. And we get out there, we jump off sides on the field goal. And so they bring the offense back out, and from 1.5 yards to 2 yards out, Brody makes a stop for no gain on an outstanding running back, and that sets up the was that the post we hit off play action after that? And,
on second down.
Then that's where things started rolling. So it was really Brody had the bookend plays that started that 10-point comeback that turns into a 10-point win. He started it with a tackle and then finished with an interception. So you can't. I mean, he's a great ball player. He's intense. He's passionate. He's everything you want in a linebacker. So you can't speak highly enough of him.
Yeah, and speaking of the defense wins championships, and Brody Lavorne as well as Ellington's been playing incredible. That is probably one of the best one-two punch duos I've seen in a while.
Well, you got to throw Zion Bonner and especially Palmer Edwards into that group too. That sack that Palmer had, and then the one followed up by Zion a little bit later. Those were huge.
Yeah, the entire defense is star-studded, and they showed why they're called star-studded for a reason towards the end of that game. And one thing I did want to point out that Columbia did very well was the run game. They came out and they were running it right up the middle. They showed very few different formations. They had the push, and the defense eventually they started clearing up, started being able to make those stops that were necessary. And I understand that the captains of the team will push to motivate that, and then the head coaches and the assistant coaches as well will push to motivate that. And the defense able to come back into it and push that 10-point lead.
Yeah, we basically what we were doing early on in the game is they came out in a couple of things that we hadn't prepared for, that our guys hadn't seen, and we were misaligned to it. We were setting the defense one way, should have been setting it the other. Finally, after the first two series, when they scored, of course, we were able to get it diagnosed, and that's when in the second quarter we started. I don't know that they had hardly any yards at all in the second quarter.
Very few.
Third quarter we come out, and they for different reasons they ended up scoring, going back up 10. And so we had to, at that point, we had to really bear down and get after it. So, again, we made the necessary adjustments in the moment, and it worked. It definitely worked out for us.
Yeah, and Coach Hunsaker, you being the offensive coordinator, I know that was a tough spot to be in, down 10 in that stage of the game. And I know there's some tough play calls you got to make there. I know Stephen Bobo broke off a huge run to get that touchdown, and he was orchestrating the offense really well. And really, Columbia started out dominating the run game, but it slowly turned into Central being able to dominate both the run and the pass.
Yeah, there were some frustrating moments as our offense just wasn't clicking. Just one guy away really on lack of execution, whether it was a technical thing or whether it was just not seeing things the correct way. But we made enough plays and moments to keep us around. And kudos to Steven. He's everything we expected him, and he's grown even more. He plays really well. He's a heck of an athlete. He's a good leader, and he's just growing into his own, honestly. In terms of trying to take advantage of what they were doing on the perimeter, trying to time things correctly in the passing game, had that big post there in the fourth quarter to get us down into that area where Steven could use his legs again. But yeah, you don't want to find yourself in those spots, but offensively we didn't do enough early on to not bury us, be in those holes. But I would rather execute better in the fourth quarter when it matters the most, and learn from a couple of mistakes in the third quarter than flipping that around. So we were fortunate in that regard, and the guys played hard all the way to the end.
Yeah, everything got repaired there in the fourth quarter, and Stephen Bobo, he's the winner of our Player of the Game award. He did what he needed to do when he needed to do it. And our Golden Eagle award, I decided that it was supposed to, I'm giving it to Ben. That last onside kick, that was what changed it from Columbia being able to just take the ball and shoot the clock out, and then it turned it into Golden Eagles going up 10 and winning the game.
Yeah, and so we had we'd practiced that. You have to fully assume that a team is not going to let you do to them what you did to them the previous year. And we had hit an onside kick across the front line last year on them late in the game to control the ball. And so we we worked on a couple things throughout the week, had some options in place, and Ben had the choice of where he was going to go with it, recognized the perfect spot, and hit the perfect kick. And William, being one of the fastest kids on the field, got down there.
He flew there.
He did. Broke it up, recovered it, and it puts us in a great position. So, yeah, I agree. Ben's a phenomenal asset to everything we do in every way.
Yeah, he's one of the big pieces. I feel like special teams gets a little bit underappreciated until you really need it. So I was happy to see that the onside kick was successful. And like you mentioned, not even just William flew to it. I felt like the entire team was there before they even had a chance to really do anything with it.
Yeah, I agree. The ball was in the air. They weren't real sure. They were unsure what to do with it, and we had, like I said, the practice had paid off for it and all that. The thing about Ben, though, is that he is one of the hardest working kids. Of course, he injured that knee in soccer in this past soccer season, and we didn't really think we'd have him back until about the bye week. And he worked himself to where, he kicked for us at Siegel, right? He was there for the opener he was 4 to 6 weeks ahead of schedule. And so that tells you the kind of heart he has, and he exemplifies so many of our guys and how they approach things. So again, it's he's a great asset and even better human being, and so you can't speak highly enough of him.
Yeah. So after this break, we'll be talking about the upcoming game against Wilson Central. We'll be right back on the Coach Dryden Show on WLIJ.
Looking to build a shop or a house? You need high-quality excavation services. Folks that care.
Sponsored by Piggly Wiggly, Echo Hills Excavating LLC, C&J Wood Design, P3 Technology, and Raphael's Italian Restaurant in Shelbyville. Coach, you got a big game coming up tomorrow against Wilson Central Wildcats. Last year ended up 42-8, very, very strong win against Wilson Central, and it was, from what I remember to the best of my memory, it was really just outperforming them early and getting in their heads in that first half and then finishing it out in the second.
Yeah, we a little bit of a slow start, if I remember right, in that game, but overall defense played well. Once the offense started clicking, it rolled for us pretty well. They're improved. The record doesn't necessarily show that, but they are playing people tighter. They're playing people better. And their coaching staff has done a pretty dang good job of preparing them for each ball game with what they have and what they're capable of doing. So that's one of the things we've got to be ready for. Is we've got to be able to line up against a lot of different looks. We've got to be able to play. We've got to be able to get ready, on both sides of the ball and special teams. So that's, it's a non-region game for us. It's, we have to be able to overcome the distractions of homecoming. All those kind of things play in. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to be able to line up tomorrow night and play football.
Yeah, and you mentioned having to face against multiple formations. Do you think this will be anything similar to Coffee County, what they were coming out with? Because I know I saw a lot was they coming out in a lot of different formations. Do you think it'll be kind of similar?
It'll be somewhat similar. Not quite the same because they don't base in the same kind of running game or passing game, but you'll still get the same looks, and for the most part. So they're and it's something you just got to be able to line up and play against. Defensively, Coach, they're pretty multiple up front.
Yeah, in going back and scouting them out, I think they try to base their scheme off of what they want to take away from that specific offense and how that offense wants to attack it. So, we've prepared for multiple looks throughout the week. It may be a little, you never want a slow start offensively, right? You want to punch them in the mouth right away, but it may be a little bit of a slower start as we feel out what they think is their best cards to be playing and figure out and diagnose what we need to do to expose that and try to get in the end zone as early as we can, as often as we can, but it may be a little bit of a process to make that happen.
I agree. It's, anytime you've got, of course, we're getting to the point now where the two sophomores that are starting for us are almost no longer considered sophomores in gameplay. They've got more experience than most juniors do, in a lot of places. So that's becoming less and less of a reason for us to not be able to execute. But at the same time, they're still learning and they're still processing. Plus, we've got a converted Y playing one offensive line position in Palmer Edwards. So, even as good as he is at the technical aspects, recognition and reaction to recognition are response to recognition are tough inside that. So it all plays itself out, and we'll do what we always do. We'll play each play, learn from it, get it figured, and then by series we'll get it fixed on the sideline, and we'll go back out and we'll continue to work. So we expect a pretty good, pretty spirited ball game. I think overall, there's going to be a lot of passion in that thing, a lot of excitement. So we're excited to have an opponent coming in that we can line up and play football against and see what we can do.
Yeah, and the Wilson Central game being homecoming, it's going to be a pretty packed crowd up there at the Nest. And I noticed, comparing what we talked about last week when we summed up the previous season, because that was our first, it was our debut of the Coach Dryden show, was you slowly see the offense go from when Robert Bailey in the first game had 30-plus carries, I believe is what it was, to in the most recent game against Columbia, he did what he needed to do. He didn't get an overuse. And I think that's a nice thing that I've been seeing.
Yes.
Stephen Bobo's been able to pass the ball progressively better and better. And, with him being young the way he's throwing right now, it's an incredible sight to see. And I'm kind of curious to see how that will be incorporated into the rest of the season. You've been kind of seeing it go from run-heavy over to this balanced. And do you think if the pass starts working better, do you think you incorporate the pass more than the run, or do you try to keep it balanced?
Well, I'm happy that we're starting to balance things out, right? Robert is a third-year junior, as in he got a ton of reps as a freshman, so that was where we had our comfort zone of knowing this guy knows what he's got to do, and he did it very well in game one. And as teams scout you out and see what your successes are, they're going to try to take away your ace in the hole, right? And we're adjusting to those things, and we're having to lean on the shoulders of Stephen Bobo, and I think he's learning every rep, like we were talking about. Take the rep, learn from it, and move forward. The more balanced we can be, I think the more potent and efficient we can be, and also have Robert when we need him the most. That second game versus Marshall County, when we were also riding him pretty hard, he got tired late, and we had to sub him out. And I think Nate Zimmerman, our backup, is a great future running back for us.
He's been doing a great job.
He's just young and he still has more learning to do. He'd be the first to tell you that. But when the game's on the line, you want to be able to have your guys in any way that you need to use them. So we're trying to monitor that better, and I think being able to be more balanced through the air, and also split a little bit of the carries, use Steven's legs to hopefully slow down the defense, how aggressive they've been playing against Robert. So we would love to continue to see that. It just depends on how the Friday night rolls out on who you end up rolling with, so.
I think overview on it is pretty. It's pretty neat to see how it's starting to play itself out. Anytime you can stretch a team horizontally and vertically, stretch a defense horizontally and vertically, you can do some great things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And what having Robert and Steven in the backfield both do, just within the running game itself, is they stretch a defense horizontally. And that's not even getting into fast screens and hitches and slants, where you're throwing the ball, your quick game type stuff. It just, now all of a sudden they have to defend the field from sideline to sideline. There is no single key. Then as Steven develops his intermediate and deep game, now you're going to stretch the field vertically, and now you have the entire field to cover, and you can't just line up in cover zero every time or you're going to get dinged. You can't just you can't stay in cover one and let your free safety just key off your running back and come flying downhill. So as Steven develops as both a passer and a leader at the quarterback position, it only does more to open up the offense and give more opportunities, more guys, and it's going to be fun to watch if we continue on the same trajectory. So
yeah, and the backfield itself, it's a very youthful backfield. You've got a sophomore quarterback, your starting running back's a junior, your backup's a sophomore, and I know y'all got a couple of other younger guys.
We do,
and I feel like what you've been seeing now. If I was in your shoes, what I'm seeing now is these guys are playing like they have been here for 4 years.
Right, and that's just athletically they're there, which goes back to how hard they work in the off season and things they do there. We have 100% buy-in from all of our guys and everything we do through our off season. So it's as a matter of fact, I got fussed at earlier today about going a little bit lighter over the last couple of weeks just to try to make sure we're staying healthy in the weight room. So we'll have to address that. It's pretty nice to get called out for it, to be honest. I mean, it's not normal. So most kids don't want to get in there, and our guys are kind of upset. So
they're banging on the door.
Oh, hey, when he said that today, when we were talking, it goes back to the process. It really does. The culture. That's what the kids. It's the standard that has been set. They want to hold that standard in anything and everything that we're doing. And I tipped the cap to the young man that brought that up to us this morning or this afternoon. Yeah, you're all right. Let's get rolling with it.
Let's make sure they're all ready for it now, because it's okay. But no, but it's also neat to see that they can come to us with stuff like that. They're not afraid to come up and ask a question or want to know why we're doing something or want to know the connection to it. But they also recognize the value in what we do and how we do it. And I mean, even though it kind of stung a little bit, it was kind of a almost proud dad moment, just from the perspective of, hey, man, this is who we are. Why aren't we not doing who we are? So it was big, and it was fun. So to kind of have that, it's never fun, I say, but it was kind of fun to get called out purposefully and intentionally, and you're like, oh, you're right. All right, so we'll fix that. So it was pretty cool, but So
yeah, the team being able to point stuff out like that, you don't have a lot of situations where stuff gets pointed out to you by players, and they have the confidence and courage to be able to come up to you with
and
that.
And doing it the right way. It was very respectful, very focused on we need to be better. And this is an area where we need to get back to being, top notch at. And so, and like I said, we had kind of scaled back a little bit, after two Thursday games and the rash of injuries that we had and things like that. There was a rational reason for it, but they were tired of the logical, rational reason, so they're ready to get back to who they are. So it was like I said, it was a pretty proud moment for me to have them. Hey, coach, it's time. So.
Yeah, and the roster itself, like we mentioned last week, y'all got a ton of players now. I don't know the exact count unless you do.
It was 93 last count. I don't know if that's gone up or down. I feel like there's guys coming in every day. So I'd have to ask Coach Mettler what that looks like.
Yeah, but y'all got plenty of players. Y'all got plenty of guys that are willing to do the job and step up when they're needed to. And I've noticed a lot of guys being able to get that opportunity that will to want to go into the game and do your exact job that you need to do.
And it's been great. We've got a couple of basketball guys that have come out. Streeter, John Streeter has come out, and he has slowly worked his way into several special teams roles. That kid is lightning on the field when it comes to first step. He is like 0 to 60 in half a second. I mean, he is so quick. And now he's starting to take reps at slot receiver. He's starting to take reps at corner in practice. So he's developing. He's just a junior. We got a transfer that came into us beginning of the season. Josiah Taylor is starting to really come on and really accept that. God, who else?
Another basketball guy, Billy Brown Jr., another junior for us, quick kid.
Yep. I remember Billy from basketball.
He's going to be okay too. He's still trying to figure things out and all that, but he's so athletic that he'll end up making a pretty good corner for us eventually as well. So guys are starting to come into the program that are beginning to have impactful moments for us. It's not just those guys that that we've had on the roster the whole time. So it's putting pressure on other guys that have, if they have been thinking about, well, I can kind of ride this out, have my chances as a senior, and all of a sudden these guys show up and everybody's got work now because the competition's there. And it's fun to watch. Like I said, it goes back to culture. It goes back to growing the program. It goes back to the standards that are set and held to, and that's what we do. And it's fun to watch. It's fun, exciting, and I love our guys to death in that they are 100% bought in to what we do. I mean, it's as soon as practice is over, you walk in. If I'm late getting off the practice field, walking in the office, it's like overloaded with players, like taking up every seat in the office, just chit-chatting and hanging out. I mean, and they're right there next to a coach that had just crawled up their hind end not 15 minutes before that.
Right.
Like, got ugly sometimes, and they're right there because that's the relationship that's been built between us and them. The respect, that goes both ways. We treat them the way they deserve to be treated well, treated with respect and love and all that, but also held, with that strength of the standard and the character. So we feel like we're in the right direction, and we'll just have to continue to work it and see where it takes us.
Yeah, and the culture part's a really big deal. Being a coach, a lot of the times, especially when everything first starts out, teams a little bit harder to get together and be able to work together, not even on the field, but off the field,
right.
Even with helping each other with assignments was something that I did a lot. I was able to help my teammates with assignments when I was in high school, and that's something I enjoyed doing. It builds the teamwork, it builds the character of the team, and it's able to bring everybody together.
Yeah, they do. They support each other. They're there for each other. So we're we still get our knothead issues and things like that. I memean, we're dealing with one guy that's you're dealing with kids that they're boys, and they're going to act like boys at times, and It's just you just got to keep the guardrails in place and keep them strong, and when they bounce off of them, it's got to hurt a little bit, and so we just continue to work with them and all that. So we don't want to give up on them, but at the same time, we're gonna make sure that when they do something wrong, that there's going to be a little bit of a painful consequence to reinforce, what's happening, and those run the gamut. But we're blessed with who we have and the fact that they've all bought into what we do.
Right, you'll push them down, but you'll pick them right back up too as well.
Yeah, we break them down a little bit sometimes, but more than anything else, what we have to do now are just reminders. It's hey, that's not who we are. This is who we are, and then a reinforcement to the reminder, and we're okay for a while. And then they'll mess up again in some other area, and we'll have to remind them and reinforce the reminder, and we just continue the process. But that's, if you take a look at it, that's growth. I mean, you have to come up against hard things to be able to survive them and then move forward and grow from it. So that's what we do. I mean, it's literally the football version of iron sharpens iron.
Absolutely.
And so it takes us to sharpen them, and that's what we try to do, to be able to have them ready for when they leave us, regardless of whether it's Garrett Doak going to the military, or it's Tarvis McClain going to TCAT, or our guys that have gone on to play college ball, or any other
have them ready for anything.
Yeah, and it's Logan McBee going to lineman school, and it's so all those guys, they just to make sure that they understand that the process is what's important. So whatever you choose to do, the process remains, and that's what we've tried to instill in them. And so far, we feel like we've done a pretty decent job.
Right, football teaches a lot more than
Yes,
just
it
football. It teaches a lot of life lessons
when
that you
those
won't
things
learn
are
outside of it.
when those things are focused on football in and of itself, competition in and of itself does not. It reveals a lot of things, but doesn't teach it. It's when you grab hold of the teachable moments that they're truly taught and reinforced and learned. So that's what we try to do.
Folks, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back here on the Coach Dryden Show on WLIJ.
Take advantage of these amazing deals this week at your Shelbyville Piggly Wiggly. A family pack of assorted pork chops, just $1.49 a pound. 16-ounce original or Applewood smoked Kentucky Legend sliced bacon.
day before game day. Just finished up talking about the game coming up tomorrow, homecoming against Wilson Central. We beat them last year, and we're hoping to do the same this year as well. And we've also been recapping the previous game against Columbia. We ended up coming out with a 10-point win. And now I kind of want to get, like I said during the break, I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit and ask.
Firing Stinger missiles right now.
What would be, in not just Shelbyville, maybe in your entire career, because I know you've been elsewhere, what has been your most defining game as a coach?
For me, I wouldn't be able to say a game necessarily, even though it started with a game, believe it or not, in Shelbyville in 2002. It was game 2 for us. I was at Warren County. There was an incident that happened at halftime that began that had a cascading snowball effect on the team and the program, and we found ourselves, myself, the current head coach at Warren County, and one other coach. We found ourselves, 3 of us, with 45 guys that were completely without direction and a rudder, and through that year, the following year, and the next year, it turned into really that year and the following year. What it really truly showed me was how important people are and how much less important wins are.
Absolutely.
Now, you would think that, anybody would say that when you go 0-20. And that might be true, but that time frame was all about the kids and the coaching staff and trying to survive in a situation that was really hard. It was really hard emotionally. It was really hard mentally. It was hard physically. And that really truly defined for me what the purpose of coaching is. And so and it's the difference between what they call a transactional coach, which is in a fixed mindset that wins are everything. I tell you, you do, we win kind of thing, right? It's my job is to teach you how to play football. Your job is to go play football, and then we win together in that. Versus transformational, which is relationship-based and worried about the person more so than the outcome of a win. And that's where this process stuff comes from. And it was those 2 years, specifically in 02-03, that showed me how important that was. Now, I wish I could tell you that in 04 I immediately started. It wasn't until 06 I had to take a year off. That's how hard it got. I did not coach anywhere in 2005. And that was the impetus. That was the beginning for me in how I started to change as a coach, and slowly but surely started to redefine who I am as a football coach, what my mission is, what my purpose is. Until now, it has become the overarching thing in our culture. And I've always been a big strength guy, strength conditioning guy. And when I started making connections to what I was wanting to teach young men and what was going on in a squat rack or with a power clean, hang clean, that's when it really started to take off. And I wish I was smart enough to have recognized all those things early on, but I'm at the end of the day, I'm a guy, and it takes us a lot of, sometimes we got to get beat over the head multiple times before we feel that enough pain to go, okay, this has to change. And then you make your changes.
You have to fail a lot before you can succeed.
And that's a lot of it. And so I would have to say that those 2 years were more, and not any one single game, even though one game in particular kind of kicked that off for me. That's what I would say is that that 02-03 season. So at Warren County, Coach.
Yeah, man. So it's crazy how much the more I'm around Coach Dryden, and it's been a blessing for 4 years, but how similar we are in so many things. We didn't talk about our answers, but as soon as he started going down this road, I'm reflecting on the exact moment that I would say defined me as a coach. I took over as a head coach before I moved out here at the age of 28 in a school in Northern California called Shasta High School. Big high school in like a Murfreesboro-sized city. and they had some talent. They were on a dry spell of about 30 years from winning a region championship, and I had always heard, they got the talent. They struggle with leadership, and I didn't know if it was the previous coach. I didn't know. When I first took over, it was kind of that transactional. Like I need to make sure that we can win. I was young. I didn't know, right? I had a good first year, really did. I came up a game short of winning the region. Second year was kind of a down year. But then my third year, I was like, I have to find a way to create leaders, because that's what's missing from this piece.
Right.
And when I started to explore it, I didn't know the route I needed to take, but when I started to think about it, what made me feel like I was a good leader to the people around me, and so on and so forth. So there was a moment early on in that season where we just dove into, with my leadership group at the time, and we have one here, diving into who they are and what they see as good leadership. And it was a group of about 7 or 8 athletes, and by the time that conversation was over, we're all tearing up and crying. I'm a grown man with kids, and we're really we have a moment, right?
Right.
Where it's about, boy, they didn't know. Some of them didn't know what leadership looked like because they didn't have it in their lives. Right. My father's still here, and he's a great human being. I was blessed with a good leader in my life to follow and see and try to mirror that. So when we dove into leadership early on in that year, and we made better young men to be leaders to the people around them and not worry about the wins, it was the most successful season they had at that high school. We lost in the state finals. So that moment that defined the coaching path that I needed to take and continue to focus on equated to exactly what he mentioned. It takes care of itself when you focus on the process of what is your focus. And before that year, my focus was on, I need to try to put a good football product on the field instead of worrying about the development of that young man as a leader, to how that helps him in all of his avenues of life. And that's when coaching really started to get fun. The wins came with it, but you dove into who they are instead of the player that they are. Yeah. And I think we do a phenomenal job of that. I'm going to pat our program, and that starts with Coach Dryden, pat ourselves on the back with what I think we invest in these kids, the development of these kids, i.e. the story that we talked about a little bit while ago, that young man wanted to come up and say, hey, this is where we think we want to go with this, because we haven't been hitting it. So that to me is the powerful story that resonates with me. And here at Shelbyville, we're living it out, so it's very reaffirming, reassuring, and the growth is happening not just with our kids, but we grow in those meetings all the time.
Right. It's incredible sometimes the insight that those young men will have in our leadership meeting, and you're just like, whoa. Yeah. I had not thought about that way. And then the things they'll pull out of you. Last week, they pulled something out of me that just, I'm glad there wasn't anybody else
hit the core.
Yeah.
Hit the core.
But anyway, I agree with Coach.
Yeah, and that's one thing I really appreciated when I was an athlete. You have your game that you play. You go out there. You want to win. You get the win. You get the loss. Regardless of what the result is, you're always going to have your football team, your teammates, and then turn around and they're also your family.
Right.
That's a huge thing that a lot of times people, like athletes that don't have a lot of good going for them outside of the sport and outside of school, or even just outside of the sport in general, they turn to a lot of their teammates and a lot of their football family, which basically just turns into it turns into blood, it turns into kin.
Yep, it does. It sure does. And I think one of the best things about us, you look out there, and a lot of times people look at the best athlete in a sport and assume that athlete is a great leader because they're great at that sport. And that's just not the case. But when your best athletes are your best leaders and have the highest character, that's when things really start to click, and that's what we're starting to see. So,
yeah, and family over football is really what it is in the long run.
Yep.
So we'll be back after this short break. We'll be right back, kind of close up, wrap everything up going into tomorrow. We'll be right back after this.
Looking to build a shop or a house? You need high-quality excavation services. Folks that care.
p.m. until 7 p.m. Thank you for choosing to spend this hour of your time with us. And getting towards the end of the show, we've already talked about the Wilson Central game coming up. We talked about last week's game, and we've kind of went over a couple of previous games too today like we did last week. And one thing that we were talking about before is your most defining game as a coach. This kind of leads into my next question of what skills does it take as a coach or even as a player? What skills are that critical to succeed in a high-pressure environment, not just by playing sports, but also coaching it as well?
Well, if you're gonna make me pick one, as far as a skill goes, it would have to be emotional regulation, both of yourself and your team and your players and your coaches. I feel like that's what I spend the vast majority of my time on Friday nights on the sideline doing. You know, choosing to go for it on fourth down is kind of dictated earlier in the week through game planning. You know, whether to onside kick is usually, or when to call a timeout, or all those things are, you know, sometimes you roll the dice on it, but for the most part, most people know when you're going to do one of those things.
Right.
The thing about emotional regulation is just the constant keeping people focused on what's important and making sure that whether it's the coaching staff, give you an insight into the headset world. Coaches are football fans too.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of times when the headset is loaded up with fans and not coaches. And so it's my job to get everybody, hey, we gotta get a call here for this defense. Hey, we got to get this done. Hey, we got to get.
Ends up feeling like you're sitting around watching NFL Red Zone.
It does. Man, you're ready, looking for shoes flying everywhere and things like that. But no, and then with players, players they're passionate. Boy, we've got some passionate guys that play with a fire, and it's getting them to, harness that and play with it through focus and intensity and not allow it to rule them and what they do. So it's just a lot of it. We spend a lot of time on that in our off season and how we approach things, but that's what I spend most of my time on. And I think it is by far the most important skill that I've had to learn as a head football coach is emotional regulation, my own. I can't help anybody else if I'm out of control. So now I'm incredibly intense. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But still, I feel like for the most part, it stays under control and stays focused. So that's kind of one of the most important skills I think that there is helping others to regulate their thought processes and their emotions. So, Coach, what do you think?
Well, I think that's probably the best answer to have if I were to say the next thing to prepare you in the next moment, because obviously if you can't hone those in during that moment, you're going to struggle. But if you fall in that moment or you succeed in that moment, the next moment, how do you attack it? You have to be able to reflect on yourself. What were you in that moment? In that moment when you made decisions, did your actions lead to this? So self-reflection, I think, keeps you in a frame of mind, whether you're growing, fixing things that you made mistakes on for the next moment, because there's going to be one, even though you don't want to find yourself in that spot necessarily. You want to take control as an athlete and not necessarily put yourself in that spot. But if you can't reflect on how you performed in that moment and why, if you came up short or if you succeeded, I mean, you got to figure out, what was the behavior that gave me the results that I wanted. So if you can't look back on that, I think you're going to, even if you were successful before, you will fail at some point in that moment if you're not trying to learn from your past experiences. So that would be the best way that I could say would piggyback
Great
on.
Point. Yeah,
on that.
I mean, between those two things, between emotional regulation and growth mindset, I can't imagine there being two more important things, because we're all going to fail. It's how do you let it define you or do you let it push you? And that's where it's at.
Yeah, a lot of coaches that I've spoken with, people always talk about the failures more than the victories, and that seems to be a trend. But a lot of the failures is what turns more failures, what could have been failures, into more victories.
You're 100% correct.
You be able to reflect on mistakes that you make, being able to control your environment, being able to control yourself is the most important thing before you can try to control anybody else. So those would have been A pluses in my quiz grades. So
I got you.
But a lot of things coming up for Shelbyville right now. Sitting at a great record, only one loss so far this year, and that was against Marshall County. You've got a really big game coming up against Wilson Central. I know the guys are ready to get out there. It's homecoming, like we mentioned previously today. It's going to be a pretty big environment. There's going to be a lot of people there. And do you think the attendance and the amount of, the celebrations that'll be there, do you think that will have a big impact on the game?
I think it'll have a net positive. Our guys play with excitement no matter who's there. But you go back to last year with the Tullahoma game and the Hillsborough game, the Centennial game, it was packed and it was fun, and our guys played well and all that. So I mean, you can't forget it's Food Truck Friday. So I mean, there'll be 5, 6, 7 food trucks out there. We don't get to partake.
No.
But, it's all right. So, but no, I think it's going to be fun. It should be a good football game.
Oh yeah, Coach, do you have anything on that?
Well, I want to tip my cap to the community because I think they do a great job of making Friday night important to this community, to the kids. You know, I'm going on my 4th year here in Shelbyville, and it creates an environment that's very special on a Friday night. I know that they really love the ending of last Friday night, but I hope that we take care of business before that because it's a whole lot less stressful for everybody when we don't find ourselves in those spots. But it's a great environment for Friday nights being under the lights with those guys, and I think that fan base only makes it more passionate. As long as we have emotional regulation, we'll be just fine.
There you go, right there in front of you, so you can remember it. Do you guys have anything else to add for today's show?
No, sir.
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All good. Well, Golden Eagles taking on Wilson Central, the Wildcats, tomorrow at the Nest. We got a homecoming matchup. It's sure to be a good one. We'll be live at 6:45. Myself, along with Barton Williams and Jason Boyette, will be on the call, and we hope to see you or hope that you listen in through 98.7 or AM 1580 WLIJ. Thank you for tuning in to the Coach Dryden Show, and we'll see you next week.